management.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thanks for joining us. Could Iran be about to ship its nuclear material to Russia? Tonight, the suggestion is mooted, already being hailed by some Western powers as the beginning of a breakthrough with a rogue state. Under any future agreement, Iran would transport 1,200 kilograms of low-enriched uranium to France and Russia. But Israel's Defense Minister Ehud Barak says the very suggestion is counterproductive, as it would legitimize Iran's future as a nuclear-producing country. Our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban, reports.
In Vienna, at the headquarters of the International Atomic Energy Authority, talks continue, with hopes raised by positive language from the Iranian side.
We were able to have, in the spirit of cooperation, useful discussion in order to have a successful conclusion.
Nobody's yet declaring diplomatic victory, but the Obama administration is hoping that an important agreement could be imminent.
This agreement, in principle, we see as positive, but we're going to withhold judgment until we hear, like I say, a formal response from Tehran. We hope by tomorrow.
Iran's plant at Natanz is central to the proposed agreement. Under the IAEA's plan, most of the uranium enriched here so far would be taken out of Iran for further processing. It would be returned in a form that could only be used for civil purposes, but it would be a one-off deal.
This is a real tangible security benefit and something we didn't get under the previous approach of threats, of military attack, of increased sanctions, of refusal to negotiate. So yes, you'd have to say this is the first demonstrated success of the tough engagement strategy.
Iran's uranium would be sent initially to Russia. The Russians are already helping build a new reactor for Iran at Bushehr. The idea that Russia might reprocess fuel has been mooted before, and so far hardliners who've wanted Iran to keep control of the nuclear fuel cycle have thwarted such a deal.
Iran rejected that because it wanted an enrichment capability on its own soil, and it didn't fully trust Russia to be a supplier of choice over a long period for them. Now we're looking at a one-off, a short-term arrangement, which is quite different. It doesn't affect Iran's determination to develop a long-term enrichment capability inside its own country under its full sovereignty.
And here's another possible complicating factor: the recently revealed underground plant near Qom. The US, UK and France say Iran was hiding a secret uranium plant. UN inspectors are due to go there on Sunday. Few observers of the Iranian program think this will be plain sailing.
Part of the strategy has always been that you reach out the hand of friendship, you put Iran on the defensive. If they do not accept reasonable deals like these two, shipping uranium out, letting inspectors in, then they become the incalcitrant party. They lose the support of some of their closest allies, like Russia and China. And then you go to Plan B, which is always there, which is you're now in a better position to insist on tougher sanctions on Iran.
If Iran formally agrees tomorrow, that won't be the end of this saga, but it will mark the beginning of an important new phase. There could still be brinkmanship and negotiation, but if the Iranians are really ready to put their industry and their uranium stockpile under closer international supervision, that would be a real diplomatic coup. Of course, the Obama White House is bound to say it's been the result of their new policy of diplomatic engagement.
This will be a useful step in improving the atmosphere for the main negotiation. But it's clear that it's going to be very difficult for some in Iran to accept even this limited step. So the fact that we're hearing voices in Iran criticizing what they've heard about this potential agreement does show how difficult it's going to be to reach an agreement on the main issues.
American forces have started arriving in Israel for exercises that assume an Iranian missile attack. This scenario may now be receding as diplomacy once again offers the promise of a compromise.
Mark Urban there. Well, I'm joined by Democratic Senator Jack Reed, the chair of the Senate Committee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities. Senator, good to have you on the programme. You just had lunch with Hillary Clinton. How confident is she that this is a breakthrough?
Well, she, like so many of us, are cautiously optimistic, but I would underscore the word cautious. The Iranians have to formally agree. We hope that's done promptly, and then we have to make sure it's done in a way that advances mutual understanding and a mutual dialogue on this issue and other issues as far as the nuclear aspirations. But this is a distinct change from the lack of any type of dialogue and any type of tangible action by the Iranians under the Bush administration.
You don't feel that this has already been killed dead, as it were? I mean, I know we had the IAEA director sounding optimistic, but just today, in the last few hours, the Iranian lawmakers saying this is absolute rubbish, we're not going to go along with it.
Well, if they do not go along with it, then as one of your commentators pointed out, this gives us further evidence that the Iranians are not interested in a comprehensive arrangement that will secure their not only nuclear fuel, but it will, I think, further underscore the perception that they have intentions to develop a nuclear fuel cycle as well as perhaps nuclear weapons and technology. That gives us, I think, more evidence to go to the United Nations, to go to the Russians, to go to the Chinese and say, you know, we have to work together right now on stronger sanctions and further steps, because if we don't, we will be faced with perhaps the possibility or the reality of a nuclear-armed Iran.
So that is how you're approaching this. I mean, it doesn't sound like the US would ever really trust Iran.
Well, I think at some point you have to, in the famous words of President Reagan, trust and verify. No one is going to sign on to an ambiguous arrangement vouched for only by the Iranians. But if we have tangible steps, if in fact we can account for their declared uranium, if we can ship it to Moscow, Russia, and have it reprocessed, that's a step forward. And I think that step could lead to other steps. But if we don't have that, if we're met on this level with intransigence by the Iranians, then it further underscores the need for additional diplomatic steps and gives us, I think, the political leverage to move, particularly the Security Council, to take those steps.
Of course, you can turn this on its head. Certainly, the Israeli Defense Minister, Ehud Barak, has said, actually, this legitimizes the very process of Iran enriching uranium. You're accepting it, in essence.
Well, the reality is they are processing uranium. So I think the reality and the acceptance of it, we're getting into sort of a philosophical debate. They have enriched uranium. We want to make sure that they don't use it in any way that would create a nuclear threat in the region. And I would also point out that it appeared to another perhaps hopeful sign that Israeli representatives and Iranian representatives met in Cairo recently for a meeting of an international group devoted to nonproliferation. So there is discussions at many levels, but I think it's helpful to keep discussing, and it'd be very helpful if we could get this arrangement move forward. And again, I think underscoring the president's diplomacy, President Obama, is the fact that I think if we get this deal, it's fine. If we don't get the deal, then we have further evidence of their lack of cooperation.
Senator Reid, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.